We are now going to be having 12 shiurim on 12 perakim. These are the 12 perakim of the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and I think it's very important before Pesach to get to know these 12 perakim. Now, there's stories and there's medrash and there's teachings from the Gemara that has been gotten around. To know the full story from beginning to end, what the Torah says, what we can learn from the actual psukim, and what actually happened as the Torah says it, I think is very, very important, and that's the purpose of this shir. So let's dig in. This is Shir 11. This is Perak Yud Aleph. It's going to be a short Perak, so we're going to go over some things, and then we're going to go on, and the big one is going to be Perak Yud Beis, and that will be the culmination of the Geula. Hashem said to Moshe, after we already had 9 makos, and the last one was Choshech, the darkness, Oid Nega Echad, there's going to be one more Nega, Avi al Paroi, I'm going to bring on to Paroi, the al mitzrayim, and on to the Egyptians. And after that, Yishalach eschem mizeh, they will send you away from this. Kishalchoi kala garesh yigroish eschem mizeh. And when they can send you fully, and he's going to drive you out from this, from them, from this land, Eretz Mitzrayim. One more nega. Hashem already promised Moshe Rabbeinu that nega, that makkah. Hashem already told Moshe on the way back to Mitzrayim when he was going to then talk to Paro. At that time, when he stopped by the inn, Hashem said that Bnei Yisrael are my bechar. I'm going to ultimately get Paro to refuse to send you out, and since you're my bechar, I'm going to kill all his bechoros. Daber ba'aznei ha'am. Now speak into the ears of the Was there a warning for Makkah's Bechoros? Paro already told Moshe Rabbeinu not to see his face again. The day you see my face again, you will die, and Moshe Rabbeinu agreed. Now Hashem is saying, speak to the ear of the people. V'yishalu ish me'es re'eu, that a person should ask from his friend, his neighbor, v'isha me'es reusa, and a woman from her fellow, Klei kesef or klei zahav. Obviously does not mean from their fellow Bnei Yisrael. It means from their neighbor, as we talked about before. Also Hashem said that I'm going to give grace to their eyes, and they're going to borrow things from the Egyptians, and they're going to empty out Egypt. And we're going to see that more in Perak Yud Beis. Vayitain Hashem eschein am be'enei Mitzrayim, and Hashem gave grace, chein, Yiddish chein, to the people in the eyes of the mitzrayim. Gama ish Moshe gadol ma'od be'eretz Mitzrayim. Moshe became a great, great person in the country of Mitzrayim. Be'enei avdei Paroi, and the eyes of Paro's courtesans. Be'enei ha'am, and also the eyes of the nation. Moshe said again to Bnei Yisrael, this is what Hashem says. At midnight, I will go out amongst Mitzrayim, within Mitzrayim, and the firstborn of the entire country of Mitzrayim will die from the firstborn of Paro, it sits on the throne. Paro sits on the throne, and the firstborn of Paro sits on the throne waiting to take over. Ad Bechar HaShivcha, to the firstborn of a Shivcha, maidservant, Asher Acha Harecham, that is behind the millstone, V'chol Bechar Behema, and also the firstborn of all Behema. The entire firstborn that's located in Mitzrayim will die. Again, next parak is going to elaborate on that also, and we're going to see whether a person was a visitor, whether a person was a citizen, whatever the status was, the entire Eretz Mitzrayim had that a firstborn was there. The firstborn from Behema, through people, no matter what the status was, they were going to die. V'haisa, and there'll be tzaka gedola, a great cry, b'chol Eretz Mitzrayim, the entire country of Mitzrayim. Asher kamayu loy nehiyasa. Again, we talked about the last few makkos. Nothing like this was ever seen. Sure, I'm sure the Nile never turned to blood either, and I'm sure there was never a swarm of amphibians, etc., etc. But again, the last 4 makkos were specifically told that nothing like it was ever going to be but in Mitzrayim before, Mitzrayim after. And again, Makkos Becharos is saying that Asher Kamayu Loi Nihiyasa, like this was never done in Mitzrayim, never seen before, probably throughout the world. Ukamayu Loi Saisif, and like it will never happen again in the future. But for all the Bnei Yisrael, lo yechratz kalav v'shono, a hound will not sharpen its tongue. Lemi ish va'ad behema, from man to behema. Laman teidun asher yafla Hashem, so that you know that Hashem has separated bein mitzrayim and bein Yisrael. What does this pasuk mean? Now, there is a explanation of this pasuk that can be said for times prior to the 1800s. And the reason why I say that is because now that we know so much more about Egyptian history, and we're learning more about Egyptian history every day, you could really see how the Torah fits in so well with archaeology and with history. The more we learn about history, the more we find out that Torah is accurate and literal. Throughout the whole Mesopotamia, throughout the whole region, and throughout Egypt. The more we learn about Egyptian history, the more we can elaborate on the Torah, but the more we can see that Torah is accurate. For instance, until Egyptian history was known, we didn't know that there was local nomarchs and then there was a pharaoh, and yet once we know that, we could read Melech Mitzrayim versus Paro, like we explained before. Also, until we knew about Egyptian history, that Egyptian history started with a small, tiny Egypt that grew into a large Egypt, Mitzrayim meaning the two Misras. Now, of course, Mitzrayim was a name of Ham's son, the brother of Canaan, but Mitzrayim also means the two Misras, and there was the lower Egypt and the upper Egypt, and we know this from Egyptian history. We also know, again, that when the king of Mitzrayim was telling Paro that the nation will go up into Mitzrayim, and not up to leave Mitzrayim, but up from lower Egypt to upper Egypt. And we know that the difference between Mitzrayim and Eretz Mitzrayim, all this is elaborated, we know, because we now have a much more broader understanding of Egyptian history. This, too, helps us with Egyptian history. How? The first explanation of this pasuk is that dogs are known to see spirits. Dogs are known to see things in the dark. That even though Hashem is going through the land and killing all the firstborns, the dogs are not going to bark, they're not going to wag their tail, they're not even going to have any sense that any death is coming to Bnei Yisrael. And therefore, that will show there's a separation between Bnei Yisrael and the Egyptians, because all the firstborn in the entire Eretz Yisrael will die, except for all the firstborns of Bnei Yisrael. So dogs that have a sense of death is coming, they have some sort of sixth sense of impending doom, they will not make any noise, they will not stir, even the tags won't sharpen, they won't move, because Hashem is separating between Bnei Yisrael and Mitzrayim. That's a great explanation. A better explanation is that there are two deities in Mitzrayim. There's Anubis, and there's also Wet. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing them correctly, but there are two deities, and both of those take care of the afterlife. One is the deity over mummified people and the graves, and one helps steer the soul to the afterlife. And they both have the heads of jackals or hounds or wolves. So that's Kelev. Kelev, according to the Torah, is a hound, not necessarily a dog. It could be a hound, it could be a wolf, it could be a jackal. So these hounds, these deities of Mitzrayim, won't even start to do anything in regards to Bnei Yisrael. And we can read this perfectly. Because it says, L'chol Bnei Yisrael, to all Bnei Yisrael, lo yechratz kelev v'shono, these deity jackals won't sharpen their tongue. They won't make ready to do their work. Lemeish v'ad behema, from man to behema. Why is it saying to Mishra behema? Why would a dog bark at another behema or to a person? Because we just had the pasuk saying that Hashem is going to kill the Bechar of Mitzrayim from Ish ad behema. So now we're saying that these dog deities are not going to bark from Ish ad behema of Bnei Yisrael, because none of them are dying. None of them are getting ready for the afterlife. None of them are going to pass along to their purview. So just like Mitzrayim, we had Ish ad behema going to die, then Ish ad behema in Bnei Yisrael are not going to die. Lamam teidun Hashem yifla Hashem. So you should know that Hashem is separated by Mitzrayim by Bnei Yisrael. Vayardu. And Moshe Rabbeinu said further, Vayodu kol avadecha, and all the courtesans are going to ascend from the palaces, they're going to lower themselves, they're going to come down. Again, Yardu, they're going to come down from upper Egypt to lower Egypt. Ela Eli, these are going to come and unto me Moshe Rabbeinu, v'yishtachavuli, and they're going to bow to me, Lamer saying, say, go, ato you, v'chol ha'am, and the entire people, asher baraglecha, also the people who follow you. And remember, we talked about how a lot of the avodim of Paro was already thrown out, expelled from his palace, and a lot of them wanted to serve Hashem. There were the Yirei Hashem of the mitzrayim who took in the animals by Barad. So clearly there already was an Erev Rav forming who were following Bnei Yisrael. And the Erev Rav is going to be mentioned again in the next parak. Va'achar kein eitzei, and after that I will go. In other words, whether it's talking about Moshe or talking about Hashem, they're going to say, go out, and then afterwards we're going to go out when we feel the time is ready. Va'yetzei miyim paroi b'chariaf, and Hashem had already left Paro with a burning anger. We saw that already after the Makkos of Arba, that Hashem left Paro in burning af, and Hashem did not again go to Paro to warn him, to talk to him, to warn him anymore. So the pasuk is reiterating that Hashem had already left Paro with a burning anger. And Hashem said to Moshe, and this is going back to the beginning. This is a two pasuk segment between two different breaks in the Torah. And the Torah is reiterating, Hashem said to Moshe, Lo yishma aleichem Parei, that Parei is not going to listen to you, L'man rivois moisei mitzrayim, so that I can increase my moisim, my wonders, and my oisais in the country of Mitzrayim. Moshe va'Aaron asu es kol ha'moisim ha'ele, and Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron did all of these moisim, lefnei Parei, before moisim. What moisim? All the moisim, from throwing the staff down to the ground, to dam, tavadeya, akinim, orag, dever, shchen, barad, arbe, choshech, vayich Hashem is lay Paroi, and Hashem strengthened the heart of Paroi, lo yishlach es b'nei Yisrael me'artzai, and he did not send out b'nei Yisrael from his land. And now it was time for Hashem to take over in the last Makkah. Let's just review the Makkahs that we did so far. Let's review exactly little bits of them before we get to Perkei Beis, because this is very short, so we have a little bit of time. So first of all, let's talk about the Makkahs that had warning. Dam had a warning, but Paro disregarded it. That lasted 7 days, and Paro's attitude was he doesn't care. In Tzvardeya, there was a warning, and Paro asked to be removed. Then there is lice, and there's no warning over there, and we don't know what Paro's attitude was. We also don't know if it ever ended. Then we had Oroi, the insect swarm. The insects, a multitude of insects swarming, and there was a warning there, and Paro asked for it to be removed. Then we had Dever. And even though Paro saw that it was a separation between Goshen and Mitzrayim, he did not agree to relent. Animals died, and that was it. And that's how the Makkah was over. Then we have Shechin. There was no warning by Shechin. And that also, we don't know how it resolved. Did it resolve on its own? Most likely just resolved on its own. They lingered until they healed. Then we had the Barad, which is the hail, and that burnt on the ground. That was a warning. And Paro asked for it to be removed, and Paro says, Chotosi, Avisi, and then there's the Arbe, and again there's a warning, and again Paro asked for it to be removed, and he negotiates with Moshe, and again Paro says, Chotosi, Avisi, and after that, Hashem left Paro in anger. And there were no more warnings. There was no warning for Choshech, but Moshe Rabbeinu was called back to the palace afterwards, and Paro said that, I want you to leave. So it seemed like Hashem had a certain designated time, 3 days and 3 days for the Choshech. After that, Paro called Moshe and said, you guys can leave. They negotiated, and Paro relented, and then Paro said, do not see my face again, or you will die. And the next parak, we're going to go into Makkos Bechoros. Ultimately, the Bnei Yisrael were sent out.